Hey there, Robert John Hadfield here again from Audiomover with some awesome classic vinyl to talk about. Word of warning on this one, gonna be making some really kind of obscure references as I talk about this record. And so if you're into that kind of thing, you'll have some fun with me pulling some of these oddball names out from the past. But this album, Kingdom Come, this was their debut album, and they didn't have that many. They only had a couple of albums after this one. But when this came out, I don't know that I'd ever been more excited about a record coming out. What I heard was that there was this guy named Lenny Wolf. He had this real, of course, Led Zeppelin kind of sound to his voice. A lot of people are being compared to Robert Plant all through the 80s and beyond. If you had that kind of high-pitched voice and it had the kind of the blues sensibility, you were being compared to Robert Plant. Well, this band was going to be a guy named Lenny Wolf. Now, the reason I was so excited about this was because a couple years prior to this, on a whim, in Sound Warehouse, a record store that I used to go to as a kid, I bought this record by a band called Stone Fury. And it was a record called Burns Like a Star. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was that age and I'd go into a record store, a lot of times I would just buy something that just looked interesting, even if I didn't know anything about it. And that was part of the fun of buying records. You go into a record store and you start flipping through the albums, and you'd find some cover or something that spoke to you in some way, and then you go, okay, I'm gonna buy this. And so there was this album called Burns Like a Star by Stone Fury, and I bought this thing and took it home, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I played that thing like crazy. I was so, and nobody else knew who they were. So here's this band called Stone Fury that I thought was one of the greatest things I'd ever heard, and I'm telling people, you ever heard of it? Nobody had any idea who these guys were. And it was really just two people. It was a guy named Lenny Wolf, and then he had a partner, a guy named Bruce Gowdy. Anyway, Burns Like a Star, Stone Fury, if you've never heard it, and you like 80s especially, and it wasn't even so much 80s, it was just this really awesome hard rock heavy metal sound. So then, I'm going through Sound Warehouse again a year or so later, just digging through records, and all of a sudden I find another Stone Fury album called Let Them Talk that had just came out, and I bought it, and I loved it even more than the first one. And it was once again Lenny Wolf and Bruce Gowdy. So I was just absolutely in love with this band, Stone Fury. Well then, but I didn't ever see him touring. I didn't know what to do. And back then, of course, you didn't have the internet. I mean, all this stuff is you're asking people and calling your friends. You have no idea what's going on. Whatever they tell you in Circus Magazine or something. But you didn't know much else about what was happening with these different groups. So then they kind of just didn't hear anything else about them. And here I'm this big proponent loving this band. All my friends knew that I was a huge Stone Fury fan. Well, then I hear, I don't remember where it was, but a guy named Lenny Wolf, who sounded like Robert Plant, they were putting a band together called Kingdom Come, and they're putting this album, and I go, Lenny Wolf? So I'm instantly interested in this. And so I heard that this band Kingdom Come was this new group with Lenny Wolf as the lead singer, who no one else knew who he was. So when this album came out, I could not get it fast enough. I was so excited about this record because, once again, this was Lenny Wolf, no Bruce Gowdy though, so I didn't know, but still Lenny Wolf was going to be heading this band. And when this thing came out, I'll be honest with you, I bought it, and I just want to always be honest when I'm talking about these things. I was a little bit disappointed. Now, that's not to say I didn't like what was on here. I just didn't like it as much as I liked what they were doing. What they were doing in Stone Fury was really unique. It was very different. It was kind of experimental in some ways, what they were doing from a heavy metal standpoint. This just wasn't. This was more getting back to truly almost the Led Zeppelin sound. And I'm sure they were doing that intentionally. Somebody was, because that's a seller. People want that. The stuff that's a little more experimental, So they put this out, and I don't want to say I didn't like it, because I did. It was just that it was disappointing to me because it didn't rise to the level that I felt those other albums had. but I bought it, and so let's just flip it over and let's take a look at some of these songs, because there were two songs that actually did pretty well. And the first one, and you would have heard this, if you're into heavy metal back in the 80s, you definitely heard this song. It was the song called Get It On. And it had this, I remember the first time I saw it on Headbangers Ball, and it was just cool. And it had this, it was built itself off of this guitar riff. It was, and then it kind of went into this dun, 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 and which was reminiscent, of course, Led Zeppelin, Kashmir sound for when you started getting into the dun, 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 dun. And then the other stuff had that Led Zeppelin, once again, Led Zeppelin sensibility. I don't know how else to put it, but it did have that kind of sound to it. So that was Get It On. It was a good song. It was really cool. I mean, I really liked it. And it had Lenny Wolf's kind of unique voice. And Lenny Wolf is from Germany. And so, you know, he's ESL, so he wrote these lyrics. So the lyrics were a little, like the lyrics for Get It On, I think it goes, we've come a long, long way to be with you. It's not that easy doing what we do. Kind of, you know, not great lyrics, didn't speak to you so much, but still, cool song. The other song that they released as a single was a song called What Love Can Be. And it's a slower song, and it's a really, really nice tune. And to be honest with you, most of the rest of this album I listened to once, and I just didn't, like I said, it let me down a little bit based on what my expectations were, except for one tune. And that was a song called 17. Now, if you've never heard the song 17 by Kingdom Come, do yourself a favor, as soon as this video's over, watch the rest of the video, but as soon as this video's over, get on YouTube, see if you can find it. That is not only the best song on this album, but it's one of my favorite songs maybe ever. It is just this, I reference it. Whenever I hear songs that have kind of a slow plodding, that's the one I always go back to and say, it's like 17 from Kingdom Come. Great tune. The execution, the way he sings, the drum line, the guitars, it's so cool. Anyway, 17, great song, Kingdom Come. Anyway, and I actually really like this picture, partly because, once again, what was this? This was 86? Oh, wrong. This was 88, so I'm 2 years off on this thing. Actually, the Stone Fury stuff was probably around 86, and I'm getting this mixed up. 88 was when this came out. And it was really nice to see a black and white picture with guys in leather rather than spandex. So they had that going for them. They still had the big hair, but they looked cooler, and it was a little more like what was going to be coming up in the near future with Skid Row, where they had that black and white, and they were a little different in that same sense. I don't remember what year that Skid Row album came out, but it was that same thing. It was that black and white, and there was no more of the bright colored spandex and all that other stuff. This was a little more cool. You know, we've got the leather, black and white picture, and okay, so anyway, so this is Lenny Wolf right here. And he was, to me, once again, I just absolutely loved this guy. I thought he was just awesome. So anyway, I didn't know much about the rest of these guys in the band. They were good players. The band was solid. I really liked, I liked them as a band. I mean, the music was, the songs that I liked, I really liked. They were cool. They were pushing this album like crazy before it came out. I remember I was seeing it all over the place. And I think it ended up being a little bit of a disappointment for them, for the record company, because it only went gold, which means it sold a little over 500,000 copies. It never reached 1 million copies in sales. And I think they expected it to do a lot better than this. And one of the things that kind of clues you into that too is the person that they put on this thing from a production standpoint. So if you look down here, it was produced by Bob Rock and Lenny Wolf. So Bob Rock, who is Bob Rock? Bob Rock was one of the most prolific producers and sound engineers from the 80s, from that era, from the hard rock era. And I mean, to give you an idea of the bands that he worked with, I mean, he worked with Motley Crue. He worked with Metallica. He worked with Bon Jovi. He worked with The Cult. He worked with, well, you know, in more recent times, he worked with Michael Bublé. I mean, this is the caliber of this guy that you're talking about. He worked with David Lee Roth, The Offspring. You know, these are the people that he'd worked with over the years. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, he even has connections on one of Sarah McLachlan's albums. So he's everywhere, and he's a big, big deal. And to, you know, some of the albums specifically that he produced Dr. Feelgood, Motley Crue, produced The Sonic Temple by The Cult. Remember that one? That was the time The Cult just took off. A little more obscure one, The Electric Boys, Funko Metal Carpet Ride, one of the most beautiful sounding albums. It only had a couple of good songs, but it sounded amazing. It was great. Metallica, Load and Reload, Bob Rock, okay? So this guy was a big deal, and they assigned him or had him produce this album. Now, from a sound engineer standpoint, Bob Rock also produced some of my personal, this is where I'm going to get in the weeds just a little bit. There was a band that he produced named Honeymoon Suite, and it was this album called The Big Prize. I was such a fan of Honeymoon Suite, and they weren't a heavy metal band. They were kind of a pop, I don't even know how to explain it. They'd be more along the lines of INXS than Kingdom Come, you know, as far as pop music goes. Honeymoon Suite, which a Big Prize, he produced that. Loved that album. Another kind of obscure reference, Black and Blue. He was the sound engineer on the album Without Love from Black and Blue, which I loved. I was a huge Black and Blue fan. And where have you heard of Black and Blue today? Well, if you listen to Kiss, or you know about Kiss these days, Tommy Thayer, who was the guitarist for Black and Blue, is now, you know, he's now the spaceman. He's the Ace Frehley character. So anyway, Bob Rock had worked on that. Bob Rock engineered Slippery When Wet by Bon Jovi and Permanent Vacation from Aerosmith, which was, you know, a huge comeback album for them. And it was, once again, massive record. So Bob Rock was just a prolific producer. So this album got attention from a top shelf producer. And like I said, to be honest, the music, I mean, it was good, and the production was fantastic, and everything about it was done well. For me personally, the songs fell flat because it almost felt a little bit too much like we're trying to give it that 70s Led Zeppelin feel. It seemed a little bit too much like that, like they were trying too hard to do that. But in the end, it ended up being a really good album, and it sold, like I said, a little bit over 500,000 copies. And then they went on. They put out another album that was called In Your Face, and it had one song on it called Do You Like It that did okay. I remember hearing it on the radio a couple times. But this was the only one that really did anything significant. And interestingly, the album called In Your Face, which was the next one, that's the same name as, and here I'm going to throw another super obscure reference out there. There was another band that had an album called In Your Face that had come out just a few years before this that was called TKO. And that In Your Face was awesome. If you've never heard TKO's In Your Face, you must track that down. That, once again, to me, that was a sleeper from the 80s that everybody missed. And it was just every single song on there. Brad Sinsel, the singer, one of the coolest, if not the coolest rock singer, his voice that I'd ever heard through that entire era. He was incredible. And the music on that thing was absolutely spectacular. One of my favorite records from that whole era. But anyway, so this band came out with an album with the exact same name, you know, in whatever that was, In Your Face, which was their second album. So anyway, but Kingdom Come, they stuck around for a long time. I think they stopped touring. I don't even know if they've stopped. I think Lenny Wolf, though, is no longer with them, which I'm not even sure what it means if Lenny Wolf's not in the band anymore, but whatever. You know, he was the guy I was interested in. And so, you know, Stone Fury, like I said, if you ever get a chance, go back and dig some of that stuff up, because this was not, if you like Kingdom Come, you may not like Stone Fury because it's different. It's not like this at all. It's very different sound, and especially if you get the album Let Them Talk, that one is just odd. There's different sounds and some synths and things in it, but I thought it was fantastic, an excellent album, and it's really worth your time. And if you like these videos we make, please like and subscribe. If you just sat there listening to me talk about all this obscure stuff for the last whatever it was 10 minutes or so, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. And leave some comments too. If there's other albums you'd like us to talk about, let me know. We've got thousands of these things. And if it isn't obvious, I love talking about this stuff. Also, if you have old audio and videotapes that you need to convert to digital, you know, just the old family videotapes, or if you have cassette recordings of who knows what, you know, things when you're growing up, piano recitals, recordings of your grandparents talking. I mean, we get this stuff all the time. Go to audiomover.com, or if you know somebody that has this stuff, tell them about us. Go to audiomover.com and send your stuff in, and we'll help you take care of getting that stuff permanently archived. Anyway, with that, have a fantastic day.